My son called me at 9:37 on a Tuesday morning. "Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow. I withdrew all the money from your bank accounts and sold the house. You've got 30 days to move out. Bye." Then he hung up. I sat there in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. The coffee maker gurgled behind me. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson next door watering her roses, completely unaware that my world had just imploded. And then I started laughing. Not the polite chuckle you give when someone tells a mediocre joke. No, this was deep, rolling laughter that came from somewhere dark in my chest. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, until my sides ached, until I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter to stay upright. My son, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone for 22 years, had no idea what he'd just done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name is Moira Lockhart, and I'm 62 years old. I've lived in the same house in suburban Ohio for 37 years. Well, lived in this house for 37 years. That distinction matters. You'll see why. I'm not a remarkable woman by most standards. I work part-time at the Riverside Public Library, shelving books and helping patrons find the latest mysteries and romances. I wear sensible shoes. I keep my silver hair short and neat. I drive a 12-year-old Honda Civic that runs perfectly fine, thank you very much. People see me and think, sweet grandmother type, harmless, a little old-fashioned maybe, someone who bakes cookies and doesn't understand technology. They're wrong about that last part. Before I became a librarian, I spent 15 years as a legal secretary at Morrison & Fields, one of the best law firms in Columbus. I typed up contracts, filed motions, organized discovery documents. I learned real estate law, estate planning, civil procedure. I watched lawyers build cases brick by brick, and I learned how to think like they did. That knowledge would save me. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. 6 months ago, everything seemed normal. My son Callan was 34, working as a financial analyst at a firm in Columbus. He'd always been ambitious, maybe too ambitious. Even as a kid, he wanted the best toys, the name-brand shoes, the expensive gaming systems. I'd worked 2 jobs to give him what I could, but I'd also taught him the value of hard work, or so I thought. His father, Robert, died when Callan was 12. Heart attack, sudden and cruel. One day he was coaching Callan's Little League team. The next I was a widow with a mortgage and a traumatized preteen. The life insurance helped. I was careful with that money, $180,000. I used some to pay off half the mortgage, put the rest in savings. I worked my 2 jobs, kept us afloat, got Callan through high school and college. He graduated from Ohio State with a finance degree and a good job offer. I was so proud. For years, our relationship was good. Not perfect. What mother-son relationship is? But good. He called every Sunday evening. We had dinner once a month. When I turned 60, he took me to my favorite Italian restaurant and gave me a framed photo of us from his college graduation. I thought I'd done something right. Get in. The first crack appeared 4 months ago. Callan called on a Wednesday afternoon, his voice smooth and casual. "Hey, Mom, I need to help you set up some automatic bill payments, for your utilities and stuff." I was at work, reshelving the biography section. "I pay my bills just fine, honey." I know. But you're getting older, and I don't want you to accidentally miss something. What if you forget a payment and they shut off your electricity or something?" I bristled at that. 62 isn't ancient. My mind was sharp as ever. But Callan pressed on, using that concerned son voice that made me feel guilty for hesitating. "Just give me your bank account information and I'll set it all up online. It'll make everything easier for you." I should have said no. I should have asked why he needed full account access just to set up automatic payments. I should have remembered my legal training and recognized the red flag. But he was my son, my only child, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for. Surely I could trust him with this one thing. "Okay," I said. "Let me get my account numbers." That was my first mistake. 3 months ago, Callan called with news. Mom, I want you to meet someone. Her name's Fiona. I think she might be the one. My heart soared. Callan had dated before, but never seriously. At 34, I'd started to worry he might never settle down, never give me grandchildren. That's wonderful. When can I meet her? How about dinner at your place this Saturday? I'll bring her by around 6. That Saturday, I cleaned my house until it sparkled. I made my famous pot roast, the one Callan had loved since childhood. I bought fresh flowers for the table. I wanted to make a good impression. They arrived at 6:15. Fiona Whitmore was 26 years old and striking in a way that made me instinctively uncomfortable. She had sharp cheekbones, pale skin, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my entire week's salary. When Callan introduced us, she didn't smile. She extended one hand. Her handshake was limp, perfunctory, and said, "Nice to meet you, Moira." Not Mrs. Lockhart, not ma'am, just Moira, as if we were equals, as if she hadn't just met her boyfriend's mother for the first time. Strike one. During dinner, I tried to make conversation. "So, Fiona, Callan tells me you work in marketing?" "Marketing coordinator for a tech startup downtown." She picked at her pot roast. "It's fine for now. Not where I want to be long-term, obviously." "What do you want to do long-term?" She glanced at Callan, something unreadable passing between them. "I want security, stability, the kind of life I didn't have growing up." "Fiona's from Kentucky," Callan explained. "Small town, rough childhood. She's worked incredibly hard to get where she is." There was defensiveness in his voice, as if I'd attacked her. I hadn't. I just asked a question. "That's admirable," I said carefully. "Building yourself up from nothing takes real strength." Fiona's eyes swept around my dining room, the antique hutch I'd inherited from Robert's mother, the good china I only used for special occasions, the watercolor painting of the Ohio River that had hung there for 30 years. "This is a lovely home, Moira. How long have you lived here?" 37 years, since Callan was born. "The real estate market in this neighborhood has really exploded in the last decade, hasn't it? I was looking at Zillow the other day. Houses like this are selling for what? 400,000, maybe more?" My stomach tightened. "I haven't checked. It's my home, not an investment property." Of course, of course." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Still, it must be a lot of space for one person. Don't you ever think about downsizing, getting something smaller, easier to maintain?" Callan laughed, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "Fiona, Mom's not going anywhere. This is her house." But there was something in his eyes, too, something that made my pot roast turn to lead in my stomach. Strike two. 2 months ago, I got sick. It started as a cold, nothing serious. But within 3 days, I was running a fever of 103 degrees and couldn't catch my breath. My neighbor Eleanor found me collapsed in my driveway when I tried to get the mail. The hospital diagnosed severe pneumonia. They admitted me immediately, pumped me full of antibiotics and IV fluids. For 4 days, I drifted in and out of consciousness, my fever spiking as high as 104 degrees. I have fragmented memories of that time. Harsh fluorescent lights, the beeping of monitors, nurses checking my vitals, and Callan sitting beside my bed, his face blurry and concerned. "Mom, I need you to sign some papers." I could barely focus. "What papers?" "Insurance forms for the hospital. They need your signature to process everything." He put a clipboard in front of me. The words swam on the page. I couldn't read them, couldn't make my eyes focus. "Just sign at the bottom, Mom. Here and here and here." I signed where he pointed. My signature was shaky, barely legible. I didn't have the strength to read what I was signing. I trusted my son. That was my second mistake. When I was discharged 4 days later, I didn't remember much about the hospital stay. Fever dreams and medication had erased whole chunks of time. I didn't remember signing anything. Callan had handled everything, made sure my bills were paid while I recovered, checked on my house. He was such a good son, or so I thought. 6 weeks ago, Callan called with more news. "Mom, Fiona and I are engaged." I was genuinely happy for him. Despite my reservations about Fiona, Callan seemed to love her. Who was I to stand in the way of his happiness? "Congratulations, sweetheart. When's the wedding?" "That's the thing. We decided not to wait. We're doing it in 2 months. Small ceremony, just close family and friends." We booked the Riverside Country Club. The Riverside Country Club was the most expensive venue in the area. I'd looked at it once for a library fundraiser and nearly choked on the pricing. "That's fast and expensive. Can you afford—" "Don't worry about it, Mom. We've got it covered. Fiona's been saving and I got a bonus at work." I wanted to believe him. But Callan made $75,000 a year. After rent, car payment, student loans, and living expenses, there wasn't much left for savings. And Fiona, as a marketing coordinator, probably made even less. How could they afford a wedding at the Riverside Country Club? I didn't ask. I should have. 4 weeks ago, I noticed something odd. I was driving past Oak Street, a neighborhood about 3 miles from my house, and saw a for sale sign go up at 1247 Oak Street, my rental property. I'd bought that house 15 years ago as an investment. It was a modest 2-bedroom, nothing fancy, but it generated $1,400 a month in rent. The Patterson family had been model tenants for 3 years, always paid on time, took good care of the place. I hadn't put it up for sale. I called the number on the sign. A perky realtor named Jennifer answered. "Oh yes, Mr. Lockhart listed the property last week. We already have several interested buyers. It's priced very competitively at $340,000. Mr. Lockhart." "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "Did you say Mr. Lockhart listed it?" "Yes, Callan Lockhart. He has power of attorney for the owner, Moira Lockhart. Are you interested in viewing the property?" I hung up. Power of attorney. I'd never given Callan power of attorney. Never. I would remember something that significant. Unless... My mind flashed back to the hospital, the papers he'd asked me to sign, the fever dream haze. No, he wouldn't. I drove straight to 1247 Oak Street and knocked on the door. Hannah Patterson answered, bouncing her 2-year-old on her hip. "Mrs. Lockhart, what a nice surprise. Is everything okay?" "Hannah, did anyone contact you about the house being sold?" Her face fell. "Sold? What? No, nobody told us anything. Our lease doesn't expire for another 18 months. I know, and it's not being sold. There's been a misunderstanding. Don't worry, you're protected." But even as I reassured her, ice was forming in my chest. Callan had tried to sell my rental property without telling me, without telling the tenants, using some kind of fraudulent power of attorney. Strike 3. 3 weeks ago, I did something I should have done months earlier. I checked my bank accounts. It was a Sunday morning. I made my coffee, settled at the kitchen table with my laptop, and logged into my online banking. And my world stopped. Savings account, $2,200 hands. Previous balance, $127,000. Checking account, $53,000. Previous balance, $2,300. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. This couldn't be real. There had to be a mistake. I clicked on the transaction history with shaking hands. August 3rd, transfer to Callan Lockhart, $50,000. August 10th, transfer to Callan Lockhart, $40,000. August 15th, transfer to Callan Lockhart, $37,000. September 2nd, transfer to Callan Lockhart, $127,000. Gone. That money represented everything. My security, my future, the life insurance from Robert's death that I'd carefully saved for over 20 years, the nest egg that would cover medical expenses as I aged, that would ensure I never became a burden to anyone. My son had stolen it all. I sat at that kitchen table for 3 hours. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I was in a place past grief, past anger, in some Arctic region where emotion freezes solid. How could he do this? the boy I'd rocked to sleep every night after his father died, the teenager I'd helped with algebra homework, the young man I'd been so proud of at his college graduation. When had he become capable of this? Or had he always been capable, and I'd simply refused to see it? 10. That brings us back to Tuesday morning, 9:37 a.m. The phone call. Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow. I withdrew all the money from your bank accounts and sold the house. You've got 30 days to move out. Bye. His voice had been cheerful, light, as if he were telling me about a good sale at the grocery store, not announcing that he'd robbed and dispossessed his own mother. And that's when I started laughing. Because Callan, my brilliant financial analyst's son who thought he was so clever, had made one critical error. He'd sold the wrong house. The property at 1247 Oak Street? That was indeed my rental property, the one registered in my name for tax purposes, the one currently occupied by the Patterson family, who had 18 months left on their lease. But the house I actually lived in, 815 Maple Drive, the home where Callan grew up, that house wasn't in my name at all. It was titled under the Robert Lockhart Family Trust, established by my late mother-in-law 20 years ago. I was the trustee and beneficiary, but legally, the property belonged to the trust. Callan had grown up in this house. He'd eaten breakfast in this kitchen every morning for 18 years, but he'd never understood the legal structure behind it. Why would he? He was a kid when the trust was set up. When I bought the rental property years later, I kept it simple, registered in my own name for easier tax filing. Callan must have assumed that modest rental was my only property. He had used his fraudulent power of attorney to sell a house worth $340,000, currently occupied by tenants with an active lease. The buyers would discover those tenants. They'd discover the lease. They'd realize they'd purchased a property they couldn't occupy for 18 months. And then they'd come after Callan for fraud. But wait, it gets better, because I knew something Callan didn't. That power of attorney he'd forged, I'd already confirmed it was fraudulent. The notary seal belonged to Sharon Berkeley, whose license had expired 6 months before the date on the document. And I had hospital records proving I was in a fever-induced delirium when those papers were signed. Callan hadn't just stolen from me. He'd committed grand theft, forgery, fraud, and elder abuse. Criminal charges, multiple felonies, 5 to 10 years in prison. My son had destroyed his own life, and he didn't even know it yet. So yes, I laughed. I laughed until my sides ached and tears rolled down my cheeks. Then I dried my eyes, finished my coffee, and picked up the phone. It was time to build a case. The first call I made was to Eleanor Hayes. Eleanor lived 3 houses down and had been my closest friend for 15 years. We'd met at a neighborhood book club and bonded over our shared love of legal thrillers. What I loved most about Eleanor was that she didn't just read about the law, she'd lived it. 30 years as a paralegal at one of Columbus's top litigation firms had given her an encyclopedic knowledge of civil and criminal procedure. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was Eleanor. She answered on the second ring. Moira, everything okay? You sound strange. Can you come over? Now? I need your help with something. 20 minutes later, we sat at my kitchen table. I'd made fresh coffee and laid out every document I could find. Bank statements, the deed to the rental property, my hospital discharge papers, the lease agreement with the Pattersons. Eleanor listened without interrupting as I explained everything. When I finished, she sat back and released a long, slow breath. That son of a bitch. Coming from Eleanor, who rarely cursed, those words carried weight. He didn't just steal from you, Moira. This is textbook elder financial abuse. And the property sale? That's fraud on multiple levels. She picked up the lease agreement with the Pattersons. Did the buyers know about these tenants? The realtor said nothing was disclosed. Then Callan's liable for fraudulent misrepresentation. The buyers are going to sue him into the ground. Eleanor's eyes sharpened with the focus I'd seen before, the look of someone building a case. But first, we need to protect you. Have you called the bank? Not yet. I only discovered it Sunday. Then he called this morning with his announcement. He called to tell you he'd stolen your money and sold your house? Eleanor's voice rose. What kind of... She stopped herself, took a breath. Okay, here's what we do. First, you call the bank's fraud department immediately. Second, we get you a lawyer. Third, we document everything. And I mean everything. I was thinking Vincent Shaw from book club. He does estate litigation, right? Eleanor nodded approvingly. Vincent's excellent. I'll call him today, see if he can meet with you this week. In the meantime, do not, I repeat, do not communicate with Callan except through text or email. We want everything documented. He's getting married tomorrow. Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. Tomorrow? At the Riverside Country Club. He told me when he called. Very excited about it. I heard the bitterness in my own voice. The Riverside Country Club. Eleanor let out a low whistle. Do you know what that venue costs? I can guess. And I know exactly where the money came from. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Eleanor reached across the table and gripped my hand. Moira, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you prepared to prosecute your own son? Because that's where this is heading. Grand theft, fraud, forgery, elder abuse. We're talking serious felonies. Prison time. My throat tightened. I don't know. I keep thinking about when he was little, you know? After Robert died, Callan would have these nightmares. He'd wake up screaming and I'd hold him until he fell back asleep, sometimes for hours. I felt tears prick my eyes but forced them back. How did that little boy become someone who could do this to me? People change, honey. Or maybe they just reveal who they always were. Eleanor squeezed my hand. You don't have to decide everything today, but you need to protect yourself. Build the case, gather the evidence, then you can decide how to use it. She was right. I'd spent my career in legal offices. I knew the power of documentation, of building an airtight case before making your move. Okay, I said. Let's do this properly. That afternoon, I called the bank. The fraud department representative, a woman named Jessica Chen, was sympathetic and efficient. She walked me through the process of filing a fraud claim, froze my remaining accounts, and flagged the transfers to Callan. Mrs. Lockhart, I have to tell you, these transfers were authorized through your online banking portal using your login credentials. Do you know how Mr. Lockhart obtained that information? I gave it to him 4 months ago. He said he was setting up automatic bill payments for me. There was a pause. And you didn't authorize these specific transfers? Absolutely not. I didn't even know about them until Sunday. Okay. We'll start an investigation immediately. You'll need to file a police report as well. The detective will work with our fraud team. Police report. The word sent a chill through me. How long does the investigation take? Usually 4 to 6 weeks. In the meantime, we'll try to freeze the destination accounts if the funds are still there. They wouldn't be. Callan had been spending my money for weeks. The wedding alone would consume $50,000 or $60,000. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone. The next call would make everything real, irreversible. I dialed Vincent Shaw's office. Vincent Shaw was 68, semi-retired, and one of the sharpest legal minds I'd ever encountered. We'd been in the same book club for 5 years, and I'd watched him dissect complex legal thrillers with the precision of someone who'd lived those scenarios. His secretary put me through immediately. Moira, good to hear from you. Eleanor said you might be calling. She mentioned you're dealing with some family legal issues. That's putting it mildly, Vincent. My son has stolen $127,000 from my bank accounts and fraudulently sold one of my properties. I need representation. Another pause. Then, can you come to my office today? Say 4 o'clock? I'll be there. Vincent's office occupied the 3rd floor of a brick building in downtown Columbus. The waiting room had that comfortable, old money feel. Leather chairs, mahogany paneling, shelves lined with law books. Vincent met me at the door himself. He was tall and lean, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. We settled in his office, and I spread my documents across his desk. He read through everything methodically, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When he finished, he removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Moira, this is worse than Eleanor described. Your son hasn't just committed theft. This is a multi-layered fraud scheme. He tapped the forged power of attorney. This document alone is a felony. Using it to sell property? Another felony. The unauthorized bank transfers? Elder financial abuse, which Ohio treats as a separate criminal offense. How much prison time are we talking about? If charged with everything? 5 to 10 years, possibly more. The elder abuse charge is what makes this serious. Ohio doesn't play around with that. My hands trembled. Vincent, he's my son. My only child. I know. His voice was gentle. And you don't have to make any decisions today. But let me be clear. If you want to recover your money and protect yourself legally, we need to move forward with criminal charges. The civil case alone won't be enough. Callan could hide assets, declare bankruptcy, drag this out for years. What are my options? Option 1, we build an airtight case, then approach Callan with a choice. Make full restitution immediately or face criminal prosecution. Option 2, we file criminal charges now and let the system handle it. Option 3, you walk away, write off the money as a loss, and try to maintain whatever relationship you can with your son. Option 3 was impossible. Callan had already destroyed our relationship. There was no walking away from this betrayal. I want option 1, I said. Build the case first. Give him a chance to make it right. Vincent nodded. Smart. Here's what we do. First, I file the fraud claim with your bank. You've already started that. Second, we contact the title company that handled the property sale. They need to know about the forged POA immediately. Third, we gather evidence. Hospital records from your pneumonia admission, handwriting analysis of the POA, everything. Fourth, we contact the Pattersons and prepare them to testify if needed. And then we have leverage. We approach Callan with the evidence and give him 30 days to return every penny plus interest. If he refuses or can't comply, we file criminal charges. I thought about the wedding tomorrow. Callan in his tuxedo, Fiona in her expensive gown, both of them celebrating with my stolen money. There's something else, I said. Callan's getting married tomorrow at the Riverside Country Club. He called this morning to tell me, very casually, that he'd taken my money and sold my house. He has no idea I know about the fraud, about the forged documents. Vincent's eyes gleamed. So he thinks he's gotten away with it. Completely. Are you planning to attend this wedding? The question surprised me. I hadn't thought about it. You should go. What? Hear me out. If you don't show up, Callan might get suspicious. He might start hiding assets, destroying evidence. But if you attend, smile, play the proud mother, he'll think everything's fine. He won't see us coming. It made strategic sense. But the thought of watching Callan celebrate with my stolen money made me physically ill. I don't know if I can do that, Vincent. Think about it. In the meantime, let's get started on the investigation. I'll contact the title company today. Can you get me your hospital records from the pneumonia admission? I'll call them tomorrow. We spent another hour going through details. By the time I left Vincent's office, I felt something I hadn't felt since Sunday. A sense of control. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was building a case. 10. That evening, I called the title company. The representative, a man named Brian Foster, sounded stressed when I explained the situation. Mrs. Lockhart, are you telling me the power of attorney Mr. Lockhart presented was fraudulent? I never signed a valid power of attorney. I believe my son forged the document or obtained my signature under duress while I was hospitalized with a high fever. Jesus. A long pause. Do you have proof of this? I have hospital records showing I was admitted with 104-degree fever on the date the POA was supposedly signed. I also have information that the notary seal on the document belongs to someone whose license was expired at the time. We need to see all of that immediately. If what you're saying is true, we have a major problem. The sale closed 3 days ago. The buyers took possession yesterday. The buyers who just discovered they purchased a house with tenants and an active lease? Another pause. How did you know about that? Because I'm the landlord, Mr. Foster, and nobody informed my tenants about any sale. I could hear him typing frantically. Mrs. Lockhart, I need you to email me everything you have, every document, every record. Our legal team needs to review this immediately. I'll send it tonight, but I want you to know, I'm not holding your company responsible for my son's fraud. I just need you to document what happened. Ma'am, with all due respect, we're already exposed here. If we processed a fraudulent POA, we're liable to the buyers. They're going to sue us, and we're going to sue your son. This is a mess. Good, I thought. Let Callan drown in lawsuits. Let him finally face consequences. After I hung up, I sat at my computer and composed a careful email to Brian Foster, attaching every relevant document. As I hit send, my phone buzzed. A text from Callan. Mom, why is the bank calling me about a fraud investigation? What's going on? Call me ASAP. I stared at the message. My first instinct was to call him, to explain, to give him a chance to fix this before it spiraled further. Then I remembered his voice from this morning. Cheerful, casual. You've got 30 days to move out. Bye. No remorse, no guilt, just entitlement. I deleted the text without responding. The next morning, Wednesday, Callan's wedding day, I woke up with a decision made. I was going to that wedding. Vincent was right. If I stayed away, Callan would know something was wrong. But if I showed up, played the role of proud mother, I could observe, gather information, see exactly how much of my money they'd spent on this farce. I called Eleanor. I need a favor. Are you free this evening? For you? Always. What's up? Callan's wedding is at 6. I'm going, and I need someone there who knows what's really happening. Someone who can keep me from saying something I'll regret. Oh, honey, I'm there. What should I wear to watch your son celebrate with stolen money? Despite everything, I smiled. Something expensive looking. Let's show them how it's done. Done. At 4:30, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting my navy blue dress. It was 10 years old, but still elegant. A knee-length sheath with 3/4 sleeves. I'd paired it with pearl earrings Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary. I looked like someone's sweet, harmless mother. Perfect. Eleanor arrived at 5:15, resplendent in a charcoal gray suit that made her look like a Supreme Court justice. She took one look at me and nodded approvingly. You look like you're going to a funeral. Aren't I? We drove to the Riverside Country Club in Eleanor's Mercedes. The venue was every bit as ostentatious as I'd imagined. Sweeping stone facade, manicured gardens, valet parking. My money had paid for all of this. Inside, the ballroom took my breath away. White roses everywhere. Crystal chandeliers. Tables draped in ivory silk. A string quartet playing something classical and expensive sounding. Jesus, Eleanor muttered. This must have cost $70,000 minimum. $70,000. More than half my stolen savings, gone in a single evening of celebration. I spotted Callan near the front, surrounded by groomsmen. He wore a designer tuxedo that fit perfectly, probably custom-tailored. Another $1,000 of my money. He saw me and his face lit up. Actually lit up, like he was genuinely happy I'd come. The audacity was breathtaking. Mom! He pushed through the crowd and pulled me into a hug. You came. I wasn't sure you would after our conversation yesterday. After you told me you'd robbed me, he meant. I wouldn't miss my only son's wedding, I said evenly. He squeezed my shoulders. I know things have been weird, Mom, but this is a fresh start for all of us. You, me, Fiona. We're going to be a family. I wanted to laugh in his face. Instead, I smiled. Where is Fiona? I should congratulate the bride. She's in the bridal suite getting ready. You know how it is? He lowered his voice conspiratorially. Between you and me, this wedding got a little out of control. Fiona had her heart set on the riverside, and I couldn't say no. It's beautiful, I said, each word like glass in my mouth. Listen, about the house situation. We'll talk after the honeymoon, okay? Figure out a good moving timeline for you. I'm thinking you'd love one of those nice senior condos over on Elmwood. Much easier to maintain than that big old house. He had it all planned out. My dispossession, my diminishment, all neat and tidy. We'll talk, I agreed. A woman approached. Callan's boss's wife. I recognized her from a company picnic years ago. Callan excused himself to greet her, leaving me standing there. Eleanor materialized at my elbow. You're doing great. How do you feel? Like I'm watching a car crash in slow motion. That's because you are. Come on, let's find our seats. The ceremony was brief and impersonal. A hired officiant who'd clearly never met Callan and Fiona read generic vows about love and commitment. Callan looked nervous. Fiona looked triumphant. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," I watched my son kiss this woman who'd helped him rob me, and I felt nothing. No joy, no sadness, just a cold, clinical detachment. The reception was worse. Dinner was filet mignon and lobster tail, at least $150 per plate for the 150 guests in attendance. The open bar served top-shelf liquor. The 8-piece band had probably cost $10,000 alone. I sat at a table near the back with Eleanor and a few family friends who'd known Callan since childhood. They made polite conversation about how lovely everything was, how happy Callan looked, how beautiful Fiona was. I smiled and nodded and calculated costs in my head. Halfway through dinner, Fiona approached our table. She'd changed into her reception dress, a skin-tight white number that showed off her figure. The gown she'd worn for the ceremony had probably cost $15,000. This one, another $5,000. Moira, I'm so glad you could make it. She bent down, her voice low and syrupy. I know the transition must be difficult for you. Letting go of that big house, adjusting to a simpler lifestyle. But really, it's for the best. You don't need all that space. And Callan and I need to build our future. Our future, built on my stolen money. How thoughtful of you to be concerned, I said. She smiled, that sharp, calculated smile that never reached her eyes. We're family now. We take care of each other. She straightened up. Anyway, I should get back to the party. Enjoy your dinner. As she walked away, Eleanor leaned over. I'm going to need you to hold my purse because I'm about to commit a felony. Get in line. Okay. At 8:30 during the cake cutting, my phone buzzed. An email from Brian Foster at the title company. I slipped out to the hallway and opened it. Subject: Urgent. 1247 Oak Street sale. Fraud alert. Mrs. Lockhart, our legal team has reviewed the documents you sent. The power of attorney presented by your son contains multiple red flags. 1. Notary Sharon Berkeley's license expired 6 months before the date on the POA 2. Ms. Berkeley's notary records show she was in Florida on the date in question. 3. The signature analysis suggests you signed under duress or impairment. We are treating this as clear fraud. All funds from the sale have been frozen pending investigation. The buyers were notified this afternoon that they purchased a property with undisclosed tenants and are pursuing legal action against Mr. Lockhart. We will be filing our own lawsuit to recover damages and are referring this matter to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Our attorney will contact you next week to schedule a deposition. I'm deeply sorry this happened to you. Sincerely, Brian Foster, Senior Title Officer. I read the email 3 times. It was done. The wheels of justice were turning, and there was no stopping them now. I walked back into the ballroom and stood in the doorway, watching my son cut an elaborate 5-tier cake with his new wife. They fed each other frosting and laughed. The crowd applauded. Callan had no idea that his entire world was about to collapse. The money was frozen. The buyers were suing. The DA's office was getting involved. By Monday, Callan would understand what he'd done, and by then, it would be far too late to fix it. I returned to my table. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? I pulled out my phone and showed her the email. She read it, and a slow smile spread across her face. Well, isn't that interesting timing? Very interesting. What are you going to do? Right now, I'm going to watch my son celebrate. Let him enjoy this moment. I picked up my champagne glass because it's the last happy one he's going to have for a very long time. I left the reception at 9:30, pleading exhaustion. Callan walked me to the door, his arm around my shoulders. Thanks for coming, Mom. I know this has all been hard on you, but you'll see. Everything's going to work out great. I'm sure it will, I said. He hugged me goodbye, and I let him, one last time as his mother, because after tonight, everything would change. Eleanor drove me home. We sat in her car in my driveway for a long moment. Are you okay? She asked. I'm not sure. Ask me in a few weeks. Do you regret going? I thought about it. No, I needed to see it, to understand how little remorse he has, how entitled he feels to my money, my property, my life. What happens now? Now we wait. The lawyers will do their work. The DA will build the case. And when the time is right, I'll give Callan one chance to make this right. And if he doesn't? Then I'll do what I should have done from the beginning. I'll protect myself. Eleanor squeezed my hand. You're stronger than you know, Moira. I'm going to have to be. Callan and Fiona left for their honeymoon Friday morning, a long weekend at a luxury resort in Napa Valley. I knew this because Callan posted photos on social media. Poolside cocktails, couples massages, sunset vineyard tours, all purchased with my stolen money. Monday morning, they returned. At 11:15, my phone rang. Callan. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 11:20, again at 11:30. At noon, he started texting. Mom, I need to talk to you now. The title company is saying the POA was forged. They froze all the money from the house sale. The buyers are suing me. Why aren't you answering? Mom, call me. I deleted each message without responding. At 2:30, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole. Callan and Fiona stood on my porch. Callan was pacing. Fiona's arms were crossed, her face tight with anger. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Mom, what the hell is going on? Callan's face was flushed. The title company is saying I committed fraud. They're talking about pressing charges. Did you? I asked calmly. Did I what? Commit fraud. He stared at me. I had power of attorney. You signed the papers. I signed blank papers while I had a 104-degree fever and didn't know what I was signing. That's not legal consent, Callan. That's fraud. Fiona stepped forward. This is ridiculous. Callan was helping you. You're old, Moira. You can't manage your own affairs anymore. Something in me snapped. I'm 62, not 90. My mind is perfectly clear. Clear enough to know that my son stole $127,000 from my bank accounts and fraudulently sold my property using forged documents. Callan's face went white. How did you... The bank accounts are separate from the house thing. Oh, you mean the unauthorized transfers you made from my savings and checking accounts? The ones the bank flagged as fraud? Those accounts? Silence. Fiona recovered first. Her expression hardened into something ugly. You're going to drop these accusations right now, or we'll make your life hell. We'll have you declared incompetent. We'll tell everyone you have dementia. We'll... Get out of my house. What? You heard me. Get out. Callan found his voice. Mom, please, let's talk about this. I can explain. You have 5 seconds. 1, 2. Mom, 3, 4. They left. As their car pulled away, I stood in my doorway, shaking. Not with fear, with rage. They'd threatened me. Threatened to have me declared incompetent, to destroy my reputation, to take away my autonomy. All because I dared to stand up for myself. I walked to my phone and called Vincent Shaw. Vincent, it's Moira. File everything. Criminal charges, civil suit, all of it. No deals, no compromises. Are you sure? Completely sure. They just threatened to have me declared incompetent if I didn't drop the fraud allegations. A pause. Then, I'll have the paperwork filed by end of business tomorrow. Thank you. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the garden Robert and I had planted 37 years ago. I'd given Callan everything: my youth, my energy, my money, my trust. He'd repaid me with betrayal and threats. But I wasn't helpless. I wasn't confused. I wasn't some fragile old woman who could be pushed around. I was Moira Lockhart. I'd survived widowhood, raised a child alone, worked 2 jobs for years, and built a life through sheer determination. And I'd be damned if I let my own son destroy it. The war had begun. The criminal complaint was filed on Wednesday, September 18th. Vincent called me that afternoon with the news. "It's done, Moira. The DA's office accepted the case. They're charging Callan with grand theft, fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse." I sat down heavily. Hearing it stated so officially made it real in a way it hadn't been before. What happens now? The police will contact him for questioning, probably within the next few days. Given the evidence, they'll likely arrest him. He'll be arraigned, bail will be set, and then we move toward trial. How long does that take? 6 to 8 months, typically. Maybe longer if his attorney files motions. Vincent paused. "Moira, you should know. Callan's going to fight this. He'll argue you gave him permission, that you're confused about what happened. His lawyer will paint you as a vindictive mother who regrets helping her son. Let them try. I know you're strong, but this is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Callan's threat to have me declared incompetent, about Fiona calling me old and senile, about standing in that opulent ballroom watching them celebrate with my stolen money. I'm prepared. Dawn. The police came for Callan on Friday morning. I only knew because Eleanor called me. She'd been monitoring the police scanner, a habit from her paralegal days. They just arrested him at his condo. Fraud and theft charges. I felt a strange numbness. My son was in custody, my only child. Did they arrest Fiona too? No. Looks like they're focusing on Callan as the primary actor. But she could still face civil liability. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I kept waiting to feel something: grief, guilt, regret. But there was only a cold, hollow emptiness where my maternal love used to be. How do you mourn someone who's still alive, but fundamentally lost to you? Callan made bail Saturday afternoon, $50,000, which I learned later he'd borrowed from Fiona's parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. The girl from the poor Kentucky family, whose poverty he'd used as an excuse for their greed, had to rescue him. Sunday evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mrs. Lockhart? This is Richard Torres. I'm the attorney representing your son, Callan Lockhart." His voice was smooth, professional, the voice of someone who defended white-collar criminals for a living. "I have nothing to say to you, Mr. Torres. Please just hear me out. I've reviewed the case, and I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding. Callan never intended to defraud you. He genuinely believed he was acting in your best interests. By stealing my life savings and selling my property without my knowledge? He had your permission to access your accounts. You gave him your banking information. As for the property sale, he has documentation showing you granted him power of attorney. Documentation that's been proven fraudulent by 3 separate experts." A pause. "Mrs. Lockhart, I'm calling because I'd like to avoid putting you through the trauma of a trial. Testifying against your own son, having your mental state questioned in court. It's going to be painful for everyone. If we could reach some kind of settlement—" "There is no settlement, Mr. Torres. Your client committed multiple felonies. He'll face the consequences. He's your son." "I'm aware. Mrs. Lockhart, please think carefully. A trial will destroy your family. Is that really what you want?" "Mr. Torres, my son destroyed our family when he robbed me." "Good night." I hung up and immediately called Vincent. "Callan's lawyer just tried to negotiate with me directly. Is that allowed?" Vincent swore softly. "No, it's not. He knows better. I'll file a complaint with the bar and make sure he understands all communication goes through me. He said a trial would destroy my family. Your family is already destroyed, Moira. Callan did that, not you." October brought falling leaves and the first real cold snap. It also brought the civil lawsuit from the buyers of 1247 Oak Street. Vincent called to give me the details. James and Lydia Morrison are suing Callan for $400,000, the purchase price plus damages. They've also named Fiona as a co-defendant since she benefited from the fraudulent sale. Good. There's more. The title company is suing both of them as well, seeking to recover their losses and legal fees. Between the two lawsuits, Callan and Fiona are looking at close to $600,000 in civil liability. Can they pay that? Not a chance. They'll have to sell the condo they bought with your money, at a loss, since they overpaid. Even then, they'll be in debt for years. Fiona's already hired her own lawyer and is trying to distance herself from Callan's actions. I felt a grim satisfaction. Fiona had called me old and useless, had threatened to have me declared incompetent. Now she was drowning in the consequences of her own greed. What about the criminal case? Preliminary hearing is set for November 15th. The DA is very confident. The evidence is overwhelming. In early November, something unexpected happened. Callan came to my house alone. It was a Tuesday evening, just after sunset. I'd been reading in my living room when I heard the knock. Through the window, I saw him standing on my porch, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, looking smaller somehow than he had before. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. When I opened the door, he looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. He'd lost weight. His clothes hung loose, and he had the gaunt, haunted look of someone who wasn't sleeping. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Can we talk, please?" "You have 5 minutes." He stepped inside but didn't move past the entryway. We stood there in the awkward space between mother and son, between past and present. "I'm sorry." The words came out in a rush. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. I let Fiona get in my head, let the pressure of the wedding make me crazy, but that's no excuse. You're my mother. You gave me everything, and I—" His voice broke completely. "I betrayed you. And I'm sorry." Part of me, the part that had rocked him through nightmares, that had scrimped and saved to give him a good life, wanted to forgive him immediately, to pull him into my arms and make everything okay. But I'd learned not to trust my maternal instincts where Callan was concerned. "What do you want, Callan?" "I want to make this right. I'll pay back every penny. I'll do whatever it takes. Fiona and I are selling the condo. We're taking out loans. It'll take time, but I'll get you your money back." He stepped closer. "Just please drop the criminal charges." "I can't go to prison, Mom. I'll lose my job, my career, everything. How can I pay you back if I'm in jail?" There it was, the real reason for this visit. "How long will it take you to pay me back? Maybe a year? 18 months at most?" "Callan, you stole $127,000. You and Fiona are also being sued for $600,000 in civil damages. Even if you sell the condo, you'll never dig out of that hole." "Then what do you want me to do?" Desperation edged his voice. "Just tell me what you want." What did I want? I wanted the last 6 months erased. I wanted my son back, the real one, before Fiona, before greed corrupted him. I wanted to trust him again, to feel safe with him again. But those things were impossible. "I want full restitution within 30 days, I said. "Every dollar you took, plus interest. I want a written confession of what you did, and I want you to face consequences for your actions." "That's impossible. We can't get that kind of money in 30 days. "Then you should have thought of that before you stole it." His expression shifted from desperate to angry. "God, you're heartless. I'm your son, your only child. How can you do this to me?" The question was so absurd I almost laughed. "How could you do what you did to me?" "I made a mistake." "You made dozens of calculated choices, Callan. You researched how to forge a power of attorney. You waited until I was at my weakest, delirious with fever to get my signature. You transferred my money in chunks to avoid detection. You sold my property without telling the tenants. Those aren't mistakes. That's premeditation. He stared at me, and I saw the moment his remorse, real or performed, curdled into resentment. Fine. If that's how you want it, I hope you're happy when I'm in prison. I hope you enjoy being alone for the rest of your life, knowing you put your own son behind bars. Goodbye, Callan. He left without another word. I locked the door behind him and stood there, trembling. Not with doubt, with rage at his audacity, at his refusal to take real responsibility even now. He'd said all the right words. I'm sorry, I'll make it right. But underneath, it was still the same entitlement, the same expectation that I would sacrifice myself to save him. Not this time. Two days later, Fiona came. I watched from my window as she got out of her car, a leased BMW that would probably be repossessed soon. She wore a cream-colored suit that looked expensive but couldn't hide the strain in her face. When she rang the doorbell, I answered but didn't invite her in. Moira, we need to talk, woman to woman. Her smile was strained but trying for warmth, the manipulative charm I'd seen at our first meeting. Talk from there. The smile faltered. I'm trying to make peace here. I know you think I'm some gold digger who manipulated your son, but I love Callan. I really do. I'm trying to save our marriage, save him from this disaster. By convincing me to drop the charges. By making you see reason. The charm was slipping now, showing the steel beneath. Do you understand what criminal charges will do to him, to his career, to our future? He'll never recover from this. That's the point, Fiona. She stared at me, then laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You know what? Callan was right about you. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. You're so alone, so miserable, that you want to drag him down with you. Are you finished? No, I'm not finished. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something cruel. When Callan's in prison, when our marriage is destroyed, when you're sitting alone in this house on every holiday for the rest of your pathetic life, remember that you chose this. You chose money over your own son. You'll die alone, Moira, and it'll be your own fault. I looked at this woman, this calculating opportunist who'd helped my son rob me, and felt nothing but contempt. Goodbye, Fiona. I closed the door in her face. Through the window, I watched her stand there for a moment, fists clenched. Then she turned and walked back to her car, pulling out her phone as she went, probably calling Callan to report that I was unreachable. They still didn't understand. They thought if they pushed the right buttons, guilt, loneliness, maternal love, I would cave. But I'd moved past all that. I was in a place beyond manipulation now, a place of cold, absolute clarity. The preliminary hearing on November 15th was brief but decisive. I sat in the courtroom with Vincent and Eleanor, watching as the DA, Andrea Walsh, presented the evidence. Bank records, expert testimony on the forged power of attorney, hospital records showing my fever and delirium, the Patterson family's testimony about their lease. Callan sat at the defense table with Richard Torres, looking smaller in his cheap suit. He couldn't afford the designer clothes anymore. Judge Patricia Morrison reviewed the evidence with a stern expression. When Andrea finished her presentation, the judge looked at Torres. Does the defense wish to present anything at this time? Your Honor, we maintain that Mrs. Lockhart gave my client permission to access her accounts and manage her affairs. We have witnesses who can testify to her declining mental state. Do you have medical documentation of this alleged decline? The judge interrupted. We're working on obtaining, so no. You have no medical evidence that Mrs. Lockhart, who by all accounts is sharp and competent, was unable to manage her own affairs? Torres shifted uncomfortably. Not at this time, Your Honor. Then I'm binding this case over for trial. Mr. Lockhart, you're to have no contact with the alleged victim. Trial date is set for February 12th. As we left the courthouse, I saw Fiona waiting by their car. When Callan emerged, she grabbed his arm, her face tight with anger. They argued. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. The stress was fracturing their marriage already. Damn. December brought snow and an unexpected development. Vincent called me 2 days before Christmas. Moira, I just got a call from Torres. Callan wants to take a plea deal. My heart jumped. What kind of deal? The DA is offering 4 years in prison with possibility of parole after 2, plus full restitution. In exchange, Callan pleads guilty to all charges and doesn't go to trial. 4 years. 2 with good behavior. It was less than the 7 to 10 he'd face if convicted at trial. But it was still prison. It was still my son behind bars. What does the DA recommend? She thinks you should take it. A trial is risky, juries are unpredictable, and this way you're guaranteed restitution as part of the plea agreement. What do you think? Vincent was quiet for a moment. I think this case has taken a toll on you. I think a trial would take even more. If Callan accepts responsibility, shows genuine remorse, and agrees to pay you back, maybe that's enough. Was it enough? I thought about the preliminary hearing, about Callan's face when the judge bound him over for trial, the fear in his eyes, the reality finally sinking in. Does Callan have to allocute? Admit what he did in court? Yes. He'll have to give a full confession before the judge will accept the plea. Then I'll accept the deal. On one condition. What's that? I want to give a victim impact statement at the sentencing. I want him to hear in open court exactly what he did to me. Done. The plea hearing was scheduled for January 8th. I almost didn't go. What was the point? Callan would plead guilty, the judge would accept it, and that would be that. But Eleanor convinced me otherwise. You need to see this, Moira. You need to watch him take responsibility. It's part of your healing. So I went. The courtroom was nearly empty. Just me, Eleanor, Vincent, the DA, and court personnel. Callan and Torres sat at the defense table. No Fiona. I learned later she'd filed for divorce 3 days earlier. Judge Morrison called the case. Mr. Lockhart, you're here to enter a plea of guilty to charges of grand theft, fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Callan's voice was barely audible. Has anyone forced or coerced you into making this plea? No, Your Honor. Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're admitting to these crimes and waiving your right to a trial? Yes, Your Honor. Very well. I need you to tell me in your own words what you did. Callan stood, gripping the edge of the table. He didn't look at me. I stole money from my mother's bank accounts, $127,000. I got her banking information by telling her I was setting up automatic bill payments, but I was really planning to take the money for my wedding. His voice shook. I forged a power of attorney. My mother was in the hospital with pneumonia, really sick, and I brought papers for her to sign. I told her they were insurance forms, but they were blank documents. Later, I filled them in to make it look like she'd given me power of attorney. Then I used those fake papers to sell her rental property without her permission. And you knew this was wrong? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. I knew it was wrong when I did it. I wanted the wedding, the life I thought I deserved. I convinced myself my mother wouldn't miss the money, that I'd pay her back eventually. But that was a lie. I betrayed her. I stole from the person who gave me everything. For the first time, he looked at me. His eyes were full of tears. I'm sorry, Mom. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I destroyed our relationship. But I am sorry. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Mrs. Lockhart, do you wish to say anything? I hadn't prepared a statement, but I stood, my legs shaking slightly. Your Honor, my son is right about one thing. Our relationship is destroyed. Not because I pressed charges, but because he chose to rob me. He chose to take advantage of me when I was at my weakest. He chose to lie, forge documents, and steal everything I'd saved over 20 years. My voice grew stronger. Callan says he's sorry now. But he wasn't sorry when he took my money. He wasn't sorry when he sold my house. He wasn't sorry when he called to tell me I had 30 days to move out. He was only sorry when he got caught. I looked directly at my son. I loved you more than anything in this world. I sacrificed my youth, my opportunities, my entire life to give you a good start. And you repaid that love by treating me like an obstacle to be removed. Like my only value was what you could take from me. Tears were streaming down Callan's face now. So yes, you should go to prison. Not because I'm vindictive, but because actions have consequences. And maybe in prison you'll finally learn the value of what you destroyed. I sat down. The judge took a breath. Mr. Lockhart, I'm accepting your guilty plea. Sentencing is scheduled for February 2nd. Until then, you remain free on bail. Court is adjourned. As the bailiff led Callan away, he looked back at me one last time. I met his eyes but said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The sentencing hearing was on a bitter cold February morning. The courtroom was more crowded this time. The Morrisons, the buyers who'd sued Callan, sat in the gallery. So did David and Hannah Patterson. Eleanor, of course. And surprisingly, several of my book club friends who'd come to show support. Callan sat at the defense table, thinner than ever. Torres presented a plea for leniency. Callan's lack of prior criminal record, his remorse, his potential for rehabilitation. Then Andrea Walsh stood to present the state's case for a strong sentence. Your Honor, Callan Lockhart didn't make a mistake. He executed a carefully planned scheme to defraud his own mother. He researched how to forge legal documents. He waited until she was hospitalized and vulnerable to obtain her signature under false pretenses. He stole her life savings, money she'd carefully saved from her husband's life insurance and decades of work. Andrea gestured to the documents on her table. The defendant showed no remorse until he was caught. When confronted, he threatened to have his mother declared incompetent. His wife threatened to destroy Mrs. Lockhart's reputation. They only expressed regret when facing prison time. She paused. This is not a victimless crime. Mrs. Lockhart lost her financial security. She lost her peace of mind. She lost her relationship with her only child. The psychological damage is immeasurable. The judge then invited victim impact statements. James Morrison stood first. Your Honor, we're young professionals who saved for years to buy our first home. We trusted the system, trusted that the title company would verify the seller's authority. Instead, we were defrauded. We're now in a lawsuit that's cost us $40,000 in legal fees, and we still don't have a home. Hannah Patterson went next. We're a family with 2 young children. When we learned our house had been sold without our knowledge, we were terrified we'd be evicted. The stress made my husband sick. Our daughter started having nightmares, all because Mr. Lockhart treated us like we didn't matter. Then it was my turn. I stood, holding the statement I'd written and rewritten a dozen times. Your Honor, my name is Moira Lockhart. I'm 62 years old, and the defendant is my son. My voice was steady. When Callan's father died 22 years ago, I made a promise. I promised to give my son the best life I could. I worked 2 jobs. I went without vacations, new clothes, sometimes even proper meals, so Callan could have what he needed. I saved every penny I could, building a nest egg that would ensure I'd never be a burden to him in my old age. I looked at Callan. He was staring at the table. My son repaid that love and sacrifice by stealing everything I had. Not just my money, my dignity, my trust, my sense of safety. He made me doubt my own mind, my own judgment. He threatened to have me declared incompetent when I stood up for myself. My voice hardened. But here's what Callan didn't understand. I'm not a confused old woman. I'm a survivor. I raised him alone after his father died. I built a life from nothing. And when my own son betrayed me, I had the strength to demand justice. I paused. Your Honor, Callan needs to face real consequences. Not because I'm vindictive, but because without consequences, he'll never change. He'll never understand the gravity of what he's done. Prison is harsh, but it's the only thing that might teach him that people, even mothers, are not ATMs to be exploited. I sat down, my hands shaking. Judge Morrison looked at Callan for a long moment. Mr. Lockhart, stand. Callan stood, Torres beside him. I've reviewed all the evidence in this case. I've read the psychological evaluations, the letters from your friends and former colleagues. I've considered your lack of prior criminal record and your expressions of remorse." She paused. "But I've also considered the nature of your crimes. You didn't steal from a stranger. You stole from your mother, the woman who raised you alone, who sacrificed everything for you. You exploited her when she was sick and vulnerable. You showed no remorse until facing consequences. And when confronted, you threatened and intimidated her." The judge's voice grew stern. "This court takes elder abuse very seriously. You betrayed the most sacred trust that exists, the bond between parent and child. Your actions were calculated, deliberate, and cruel. I sentence you to 7 years in the Ohio Department of Corrections, with eligibility for parole after 4 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution of $127,000 to Moira Lockhart, plus interest and court costs, totaling $142,000. You will also pay restitution to James and Hannah Morrison in the amount of $95,000 for the damages caused by your fraudulent property sale." Callan's knees buckled. Torres grabbed his arm to steady him. "Bailiff, remand the defendant into custody." As the bailiff handcuffed Callan, he looked at me one final time. His face was streaked with tears, his eyes pleading. I met his gaze, but felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief, just emptiness. The bailiff led him away. It was over. In the weeks that followed, I waited for the guilt to come, for the crushing regret, the maternal grief, the what-ifs that would keep me awake at night. They never came. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Eleanor noticed it first. We were having coffee at her house, watching snow fall in her backyard. "You seem different," she said. "Lighter, somehow." "I feel lighter, like I've been carrying a weight for years and finally put it down." "Any regrets?" I considered the question honestly. "I regret that my son became someone capable of this. I regret the years I spent enabling his entitlement. But pressing charges? Going through with prosecution? No, that was the right thing." "What are you going to do now?" That was the question, wasn't it? I was 62, with my finances still in recovery, my family fractured, my future uncertain. But for the first time in months, I felt excited about that future. In March, I started something new. It began with a conversation at the library. A patron named Dorothy, who I'd known for years, confided that her daughter had been pressuring her to sign over her house. "She says I'm too old to manage it alone, that I should let her handle everything. But Moira, I'm only 70 and my mind is sharp. I feel like she's trying to take advantage." I told Dorothy my story. All of it, her eyes filled with tears. "You pressed charges against your own son?" "I did. That must have been so hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also necessary. Dorothy, you have rights. You don't have to let your daughter pressure you into anything." By the end of our conversation, Dorothy had the number for Vincent Shaw and a referral to a financial protection service. That encounter sparked an idea. I called Eleanor that night. "What if we started a consulting service for seniors dealing with financial abuse from family members?" "I'm listening." "You have the legal background. I have the lived experience. Together, we could help people recognize the warning signs, protect their assets, understand their options. We could host workshops at community centers, maybe even work with local law enforcement." Eleanor was silent for a moment. Then, "Moira, that's brilliant. When do we start?" By April, Elder Financial Protection Services was officially launched. We started small, workshops at the Riverside Community Center, informational sessions at senior centers. Eleanor handled the legal education. I shared my story and helped people recognize manipulation tactics. The response was overwhelming. At our first workshop, 30 people showed up. By the third, we had a waiting list. Elderly people who'd been pressured by children, grandchildren, caregivers. People who felt guilty for suspecting their loved ones but knew something was wrong. We gave them permission to protect themselves. We gave them resources and support. We gave them hope. One woman, Patricia, approached me after a workshop in tears. "My son has been stealing from me for 2 years. I knew it, but I felt so guilty for even thinking it. Hearing your story, I'm going to report it. I'm going to protect myself. 6 weeks later, Patricia called to tell me her son had been arrested. I feel terrible, she said, but I also feel free. Thank you, Moira. That was when I understood. My pain had purpose. Callan had stolen my money, betrayed my trust, shattered our relationship. But through that devastation, I'd found a mission, a way to turn my suffering into something meaningful. In May, I received my first restitution payment, $2,000 from the sale of Callan and Fiona's condo. Vincent called with the news. It's not much, but it's a start. The condo sold at a loss, and most of the proceeds went to the Morrisons. But you should receive monthly payments from Callan's prison wages and from garnishment of Fiona's salary once the divorce is final. How much monthly? Probably $200 to $300. At that rate, it'll take decades to repay you fully. I'd never see most of that money again. I'd accepted that, but the principle mattered more than the amount. Every payment was an acknowledgement of what Callan had done, a reminder that actions have consequences. June brought my 63rd birthday. Eleanor and the book club threw a surprise party at my house, the real house, 815 Maple Drive, the one Callan had never managed to take from me. 20 people showed up, filling my living room with laughter and warmth. They brought food, wine, flowers. Patricia from our workshop came, as did Dorothy and several other people I'd helped through EFPS. As I looked around at these faces, friends old and new, people whose lives I'd touched and who'd touched mine, I realized something profound. Callan had accused me of being alone. Fiona had sneered that I'd die bitter and isolated. They were wrong. I had built a community, a real one, based on mutual respect and genuine care, not the transactional relationship I'd had with my son, where love was measured in money and sacrifice. Eleanor raised her glass. To Moira, the strongest woman I know. Everyone drank to that. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were good tears. Healing tears. In August, I did something I'd always wanted to do. I traveled. First to Ireland, where my grandmother had been born. I spent 2 weeks exploring Dublin, kissing the Blarney Stone, drinking Guinness in pubs where locals welcomed me like family. Then to Nova Scotia, where I rented a cottage by the ocean and spent a month reading, writing, walking on beaches, letting the sea air clear the last remnants of pain from my lungs. I posted photos to Facebook, something I rarely did, not to prove anything to anyone, but simply to document my joy. A few people commented, old friends from my legal secretary days, book club members, people from EFPS workshops. One comment stood out, from my cousin Sarah, whom I hadn't seen in years. Moira, you look happier than I've seen you in decades. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. She was right. I was happy. Not the frantic, desperate happiness of someone trying to convince themselves, but a deep, settled contentment, the peace of someone who'd survived the worst and come out stronger. September marked 1 year since Callan's phone call, since the day my world imploded. I marked the anniversary quietly, with tea and reflection in my garden. A year ago, I'd lost $127,000, my rental property, and my relationship with my son. But I'd gained so much more. I'd gained self-respect. I'd proven to myself that I was strong enough to demand justice, even when it cost me dearly. I'd gained purpose. EFPS had helped over 100 people in 6 months. We'd prevented countless financial abuses. We'd given vulnerable people their power back. I'd gained community, real friendships based on who I was, not what I could provide. And I'd gained freedom. Freedom from the weight of enabling Callan's entitlement. Freedom from the fear of his disapproval. Freedom to live my life on my own terms. Eleanor found me in the garden that afternoon. Penny for your thoughts? I was just thinking. A year ago, I thought my life was ending. Turns out it was just beginning. She smiled. You know what I admire most about you, Moira. You turned your pain into power. You could have become bitter, resentful. Instead, you became someone who helps others. I had good teachers. I squeezed her hand. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. In October, I received a letter. It came to Vincent's office. All correspondence with Callan had to go through lawyers. Vincent called to tell me it had arrived. Do you want me to open it and summarize? No, I'll come by and read it myself. The envelope sat on Vincent's desk, my name written in Callan's familiar handwriting. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Dear Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you, but I'm writing anyway because I need you to know some things. Prison is hard, harder than I imagined. I'm in a cell with a guy who beat someone nearly to death over a drug deal. The food is terrible. The guards are cruel. Every day is a struggle just to survive. But here's the thing. I deserve this. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, about who I became, and I finally understand something I couldn't see before. I betrayed the person who loved me most in the world. Not because I had to, not because I was desperate, but because I felt entitled to your money, your property, your life. Fiona and I are divorced now. She claimed she was a victim too, that I manipulated her. Maybe that's partly true, but the truth is we were both greedy. We both saw you as an obstacle instead of a person. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to write back, but I need you to know. You were right to press charges. You were right to demand justice. Because without consequences, I would have kept taking. From you, from others, I would have become an even worse person than I already was. These 4 years in prison might be the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because prison is good, but because it's finally teaching me what you tried to teach me all along. That people aren't commodities, that love isn't transactional, that I'm not entitled to anything I haven't earned. I'm taking classes, GED tutoring for other inmates, addiction counseling groups. I'm trying to become someone better, someone you might be proud of again someday, even if from a distance. I know I destroyed our relationship. I know it can never be what it was. But I hope that someday, maybe not now, maybe not for years, we might be able to talk again. Not as mother and son necessarily, but as two people who share a history and are trying to move forward. I love you, Mom. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do. Callan, I read the letter 3 times. Was it genuine or another manipulation? I couldn't be sure. Maybe I'd never be sure, but I realized something. It didn't matter. Whether Callan truly understood what he'd done or was just performing remorse again, my healing didn't depend on his transformation. I'd already done the work. I'd already reclaimed my life. His journey was his own now. Are you going to write back? Vincent asked gently. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I need to think about it. That's fair. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday I'd visit him. Maybe, with years and therapy and genuine change, we could have some kind of relationship again. But not today. Today I had workshops to plan. People to help. A life to live. On a crisp November morning, I stood in front of a crowd at the Riverside Community Center. 50 people had come to hear me speak about elder financial abuse. 50 people who'd seen our flyers, heard about EFPS, wanted to learn how to protect themselves and their loved ones. I looked out at their faces, some suspicious, some frightened, some hopeful, and I began. My name is Moira Lockhart. I'm 63 years old, and 2 years ago my son stole $127,000 from my bank accounts and sold my house without my permission. A woman in the front row gasped. I pressed charges. He was convicted and sentenced to 7 years in prison. And today I'm here to tell you why that was the right decision and how you can protect yourself from the same thing happening to you. For the next hour, I shared my story, the warning signs I'd missed, the manipulation tactics Callan had used, the legal protections available, the importance of setting boundaries with family. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. During the Q&A, an elderly man raised his hand. Wasn't it hard, sending your own son to prison? It was the hardest thing I've ever done, I said honestly. But I learned something crucial. Love without respect is worthless. Family without integrity is meaningless. And sometimes, the cruelest kindness is setting someone free to face their consequences. After the workshop, people lined up to thank me, to share their own stories, to ask for help. One woman, probably in her 70s, gripped my hands with tears in her eyes. My daughter has been pressuring me to sell my house. I thought I was being paranoid, but after hearing you, I'm going to get a lawyer. Thank you for giving me permission to protect myself. You always had that permission, I told her. You just needed someone to remind you. That night, I sat in my living room, my real living room, in the house Callan had never managed to take, and reflected on the journey. 2 years ago, I'd received a phone call that shattered my world. Today, I'd helped 50 people avoid the same fate. Tomorrow, I'd help 50 more. My son was in prison. My savings were still in recovery. My family was fractured, possibly beyond repair. But I was free. Free from the burden of enabling. Free from the fear of abandonment. Free from measuring my worth by someone else's approval. I'd lost a son, but I'd found myself, and in the end, that was enough. 3 years after Callan's conviction, EFPS had helped over 500 people. Eleanor and I had expanded to 3 cities, training volunteers, partnering with law enforcement, making a real difference. I never did write back to Callan, but I kept his letters. He wrote every few months, chronicling his slow transformation, or his performance of transformation. I still wasn't sure which. Fiona remarried and moved to California. I heard she worked in real estate now. The irony wasn't lost on me. The Pattersons still rented my property on Oak Street. Their lease had become month to month, but they were excellent tenants, and I saw no reason to change anything. I'd recovered $38,000 of my stolen money through restitution payments. I'd never see the rest, but I'd made peace with that. On my 65th birthday, Eleanor asked me if I was happy. I thought about it carefully. I was 65, single, estranged from my only child. I lived alone in a house full of memories, both good and painful. But I had meaningful work, genuine friendships, a sense of purpose, the freedom to live my life on my own terms. Yes, I said. I'm happy. And I meant it, because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. You can survive anything if you refuse to betray yourself. Callan had stolen my money, my property, my trust, but he'd never stolen the one thing that truly mattered, my self-respect. And that was something no one could ever take from me again.